How many of you know about the life of Filipinos at a time when we're not completely conquered by the Spaniards? His name was Fray de Puerto Carrero del Convento de Villanueva de la Serena, and he was a Spaniard Franciscan monk. Fray Juan was born in early 16th century into the illustrious Portocarreros family of Plasencia, Extremadura, Spain. One of the 7 children of Pedro Portocarrero, a captain of Spanish schooner. He was one of the first Franciscan missionaries to arrive at the islands on July 2, 1578. He spent the most of his missionary career in the Philippines, where he founded numerous towns in the province of Bulacan, Laguna, and Rizal. He also published a number of religious and linguistic works, including the Doctrina Christiana or Christian Doctrine, which was the first book printed in the Philippines, and kept his word as a friar, living a life devoid of luxury and in regular touch with the people he was attempting to convert to Christianity. He was also renowned for being a protector of the indigenous people, looking after the poor, ill, and standing up for their rights on numerous occasions. And he passed away in Lilim, Laguna, Calabarzon, Philippines in year 1590. The purpose of the study is to put an end to some government officials' abuses towards the indigenous people. Relación de las costumbres and instruction, which means that not only help understand and preserve many of the traditional ways of the local population, but also provided the first form of civil code used by local governors to administer justice. Bago natin talakayin ang kaugalian ng mga Katagalugan o customs of the Tagalogs, alamin muna natin kung ano ba talaga ito. What is customs? According to the dictionary, when we say customs, it is a traditional and widely accepted way of behaving or doing something that is specific to a particular society, place, or time. Tatalakayin natin ngayon ang naging buhay ng mga Pilipino noong panahon na hindi pa tayo tuluyang nasakop ng mga Kastila. May 4 na social classes ang mga Pilipino noon. Ito ay ang datu, maharlika, aliping namamahay at aliping sa gigilir. Ang pinakamataas na social class noon ay tinatawag na datu o sa English ay chieftain. They are the chief who govern the people in the barangay and were the one implementing laws, maintaining peace and order in the barangay. The subject who committed any offense against them or spoke a word to their wives and children was severely punished. Also, datus governed between. Speaking of barangay, what is barangay? Natives inferred that the reason for giving themselves this name arose from the fact that they are classed. Even at the present day, it is certain that this barangay in its origin was family of parents of children, relations, and slaves. Ang pangalawa ay ang mga maharlika o nobles in English. They are the free people, and one of the benefits they get is that they do not pay taxes. They are the one who assists the datu were also trained to fight during wars and conflicts in their barangay. Next is the aliping namamahay, or what we call the commoners. From the word commoners, they are the common people and they can't be sold. An average people who work in a household as a servant of maharlikas and datus, and they get paid for it. They can also live in their own house and have their own property. At ang pinakamababa sa social classes ay ang aliping sa gigilir. They have the lowest kind of jobs, usually the heavy ones. Nakatira sila sa bahay ng kanilang mga amo sapagkat hindi sila pwedeng bumili ng lupain at hindi sila pwedeng magpakasal hanggat walang permiso sa kanilang mga amo. In other words, they have no control over their own life.
When it comes to their marriage, they have a set of rules to follow, and here are the situations which they need to follow. If Maharlikas had children among their slaves, their children and their mother become free. If Maharlikas had children by the slave woman of another, the slave woman was compelled, when pregnant, to give her master half of a gold ta'am. In this case, half of the children was free if the father, which is Maharlika, recognizes him. If not, the children will become whole slave. Free woman had children by a slave, they were all free, provided he were not her husband. If two persons are married, of whom one was a Maharlika and the other one is a slave, the children will be divided. Maharlikas could not, after marriage, move from one village to another without paying a certain fee in gold, ranging from 1 to 3 taels, and a banquet to the entire barangay, as arranged among them. When one married woman of another village, the children were afterwards divided equally between the two barangays. But before marriage, men go through courtship first. What is the way of their courtship before? Their courtship begins with paninilbihan to the lady and her family. Prior to marriage, men requires to give dowry. It's either properties, land, or accessories. What if they separate? The parents will benefit the dowries, and if the female doesn't have a family and child from her ex-husband, the female will benefit the dowry. In terms of the datus children inheritance, the first son of the barangay chieftain inherits the father's position. If the first son dies, the second son succeeds their father. And in the absence of the male heirs, it is the eldest daughter that becomes the chieftain. Now, let's move to their religious belief. They have no temple, but they have simbahan, which means a place for adoration, where they wish to celebrate festival or what they call pandot. They constructed for the purpose of sheltering the assembled people. A temporary shed beside the house with the roof is called the sibi, to protect the people from getting wet when it rains. On the post of the house, they put small lamps called sorihile, and in the center of the house, they put a large lamp, adorned with leaves of the white palm, wrought into many designs. They also brought together many drums to use in the feast, which usually lasted for 4 days. In this time, the whole barangay is united to worship, which they call nagaanitos. Among their many idols, sun, which accounts for its beauty, moon, they specially worship Bathala, which signifies all-powerful or maker of all things. Their manner of offering sacrifices was to proclaim a feast and offer to the devil what they had to eat. This was done in front of the idol, which they anoint with fragrant perfumes, and praise in poetic songs sung by the officiating priest, male or female, who is called Katalona. They also have their offerings such as goats, foals, and swine, which were flawed, decapitated, and laid before the idol. In the case of young females who had their monthly course initially had their eyes blindfolded for 4 days and 4 nights, while their relatives visit them at their home to eat and drink. The Catalanan led her to the river after the period and washed her hair and removed the bandage from her eyes. They started this custom for the females to have a child and find a spouse who would not leave them widowed in their youth. How about their manner of burying the dead? The deceased was buried beside his house, and, if he were a chief, he was placed beneath a little house or porch. Before entering him, they mourned him for 4 days, and afterward laid him on a boat that served as a coffin or bier and guarded him by slave. These infidels said that they knew that there was another life, of rest which they called Makkah or paradise, or in the other words, village of rest. They also said that in the other life and morality, there was a place of punishment, grief, and affliction called Kasanaan, which was a place of anguish.
They said that all the weak went to that place, and there dwelt the demons who they called Satan. There were also ghosts which they called vivid, and phantoms which they called tikbalang, and some distinctions among the priests of the devil, such as katalunan, manggabuhay, manisalat, manpupulang, hukluban, silagan, manananggal, uswang, manggagayuma, sun, pangatauhan, and bayugin. They also had another deception, namely that if any woman died in childbirth, she and the child suffered punishment, and that at night she could be heard lamenting. This was called pantianok.